After Mike Tyson destroyed her son in a brutal street fight, this mother did something nobody expected. Mike Tyson's right hand is shattered. 4 bones broken, knuckles split open, so swollen he can't make a fist. The pain is excruciating, but he doesn't care, because 3 hours ago, at 4 a.m. outside a Harlem clothing store, he used that hand to destroy a man's face. Mitch Blood Green is in the hospital right now with a broken nose, shattered orbital bone, fractured jaw, and a concussion so severe doctors aren't sure he'll ever fight again. Tyson is 20 years old, undefeated, and standing in Costomato's gym, staring at his mangled hand like it belongs to someone else. And 10 seconds from now, someone's going to walk through that gym door, who will change everything he thinks he knows about himself. It's August 1988. Mike Tyson is the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. He's destroyed every opponent put in front of him. 35 fights, 35 wins, 31 knockouts. He's a deity, untouchable, invincible, and completely out of control. Costomato, the only father figure Tyson ever had, died 2 years ago. Since then, Tyson's been spiraling. The discipline is gone. The focus is gone. What remains is pure, weaponized rage, looking for targets. Mitch Green gave him one. Green is a heavyweight contender Tyson fought and demolished 2 years earlier. But Green has been talking, telling anyone who listened that the fight was fixed, that Tyson's a fraud, that without Cos he's nothing. For months, Tyson ignored it. But last night, Green made a mistake. He showed up outside Dapper Dan's, the famous Harlem clothing boutique, where everyone goes to be seen. It's 4 a.m., Tyson's there with his crew, buying custom leather. Green walks up, drunk, loud, talking about how Tyson owes him money, how Tyson's scared to give him a rematch, how Tyson's soft now that Cos is gone. Tyson tries to walk away, he really does, but Green won't stop, gets in his face, pokes him in the chest, says the words that seal his fate. Cos would be ashamed of what you became, a punk, with a belt. What happens next? Last 17 seconds. Tyson hits Green with a right hand that sounds like a baseball bat hitting meat. Green goes down, gets back up. Tyson hits him again, and again. Green's face is coming apart, blood spraying, bone crunching, witnesses screaming. Tyson's crew is yelling at him to stop, but Tyson can't hear them. All he can hear is Mitch Green talking about Cos. All he can feel is rage. And then something happens. Green is on the ground, defenseless, blood pooling under his head. Tyson's fist is raised for another strike, and he stops, just stops. Green is still conscious, barely, looking up at Tyson with one eye, swollen shut, and in that eye, Tyson sees something that breaks through the rage. He sees fear, real fear, not the fear opponents have in the ring, when they know they're going to lose. This is different. This is the fear of a man who thinks he's about to die, and in that moment, Tyson sees his mother, Lorna Tyson, dead 6 years now, from cancer. He sees her eyes in Green's eye, sees her begging him to stop, and he does. He drops his hand, turns around and walks away. His hand is destroyed. He can already feel the bones grinding, but he walks away, leaves Green bleeding on the concrete, doesn't call an ambulance, doesn't apologize, just leave. Now it's 3 days later. Tyson's hand is in a cast. Cos's old trainer, Kevin Rooney, has been trying to get him to see a specialist, but Tyson refuses. He's sitting in the gym, staring at his hand, when the door opens. A woman walks in. She's elderly, has to be in her 60s, wearing a floral church dress, pearls, a small hat with netting, white gloves. She looks like she's on her way to Sunday service, but it's Tuesday morning, and she's not here to pray. Rooney approaches her. "Ma'am, the gym's not open to the public. If you're looking for, I'm looking for Mike Tyson," she says. Her voice is soft but firm, the kind of voice that spent decades commanding respect in a world that didn't want to give it. "I'm Dorothy Green, Mitch Green's mother. I'd like to speak with him." The gym goes silent. Every sparring session stops. Every conversation dies. Everyone's staring at this elderly black woman in church clothes, asking to speak to the man who nearly killed her son 3 days ago. Rooney looks at Tyson, uncertain, ready to intervene, ready to protect Tyson from whatever's about to happen. But Tyson stands up, and he says something nobody expects. "Let her talk." He walks over to a corner of the gym where there are 2 folding chairs and a small table, sits down. Miss Dorothy Green follows him, her heels clicking on the wooden floor, her back straight, her head high. She sits across from him, smoothing her dress, adjusting her gloves, and for a long moment, they just look at each other. This 20-year-old destroyer with a broken hand and a broken soul. This 67-year-old mother, who's buried 2 sons already and is watching her 3rd one destroy himself. Finally, she speaks. I want to thank you. Tyson blinks. He's heard wrong. He has to have heard wrong. What? Miss Green's voice is steady. I said I want to thank you for not killing my son. Tyson's face goes blank. He doesn't know how to process this. He's been preparing for anger, for tears, for accusations, for a mother's grief weaponized into rage. But gratitude, he has no defense against gratitude. I don't understand, Tyson says quietly. Miss Green takes off her gloves, one finger at a time, deliberate and slow. Her hands are old, weathered, covered in the kind of scars that come from decades of hard work. She places them on the table, palms down. Baby, I saw the footage. The police showed it to me, asked if I wanted to press charges. I watched you hit my son, watched him go down, watched you hit him again, and again. Her voice doesn't waver. And then I watched you stop. Tyson's throat is tight. He can't speak. You had him on the ground, she continues, defenseless. You could have kept going. Men with your power, your anger, they don't stop. They don't know how, but you did. Your fist was in the air, and you stopped. Why? Tyson's voice comes out broken. I saw my mother. Miss Green tilts her head, listening. In his eye, Tyson says, I saw my mother, begging me to stop. So I did. And this is the moment. The dialogue peak. The sentence that stops time and rewrites the story. Because Miss Green reaches across that table, takes Tyson's broken, cast-covered hand in her old, scarred hands, and says, Baby, I know my son started that fight. I know he's a fool. I know he's been drinking himself to death since his boxing career ended. I know he's angry at the world and takes it out on anyone who listen. But you had him on the ground and you stopped. Most men with your power wouldn't. So I came here to look you in the eye and say, you're not what they say you are. You're not a monster. Monsters don't stop. Tyson breaks, just completely shatters. Tears are running down his face, and he doesn't even try to hide, because this woman, whose son he destroyed, who has every right to hate him, who could be screaming at him right now, is holding his hand and telling him he's human, telling him she saw his moment of mercy and recognized it as proof of something good buried underneath all that rage. I killed your son's career, Tyson whispers. Doctors say he might never fight again. Boxing was killing him. Miss Green says simply, maybe you saved his life by ending his career. Maybe that beating will be the wake-up call he needed. Or maybe it won't. But that's not on you, babe. You did what you had to do to defend yourself. But you didn't do what you could have done. And that's the difference between power and wisdom. You had both that night. Tyson looks at her through his tears. How can you forgive me? Because I've buried 2 sons already. One to gang violence, one to an overdose. And I've been watching Mitch kill himself slowly for 5 years. When the police showed me that footage, you know what my first thought was? Thank God it was Mike Tyson. Thank God it was someone strong enough to hurt him, but wise enough to stop. Because if it had been someone else, I'd be planning Mitch's funeral right now, instead of sitting here talking to you. She squeezes his broken hand gently. You gave my son a second chance, Mike. Even if you didn't know it, you showed him that his mouth writes checks his body can't cash anymore. Maybe that'll humble him. Maybe it'll save him. She pauses. But more importantly, you gave yourself a second chance. You chose mercy when you could have chosen murder. Don't forget that. Don't let anyone tell you you're a monster when I saw you choose to be a man. The gym is silent. Everyone within earshot is frozen, listening to this grandmother, in church clothes, redefine Mike Tyson's identity while he sits across from her crying like a child. Miss Green stands up slowly, her knees creaking. She puts her gloves back on, one finger at a time, smooths her dress, and before she leaves, she leans down and kisses Tyson, on the top of his head, like a mother, like a blessing, and she whispers something only he can hear. Your mama's proud of you for stopping. I can feel her spirit. She's been with you this whole time, baby. Don't forget she's watching. Then she walks out, heels clicking, back straight, head high, and Mike Tyson sits there in that gym, broken hand on the table, tears drying on his face, feeling something he hasn't felt since Cause died, seen, not as a weapon, not as a commodity, not as a monster, as a human being capable of both violence and mercy, and maybe mercy is the harder choice. But that was only the beginning of what Dorothy Green's visit would mean. 3 months later, Mitch Green calls Tyson. It's awkward at first. Neither knows what to say. Finally, Green speaks. My mother came to see you, Tyson confirms. Silence. Then Green, she told me what she said. About you stopping. About you giving me a second chance. More silence. I'm in rehab, Mike. Alcohol. 90 days. First time in my life I've been sober for more than a week. And I'm here because my mother said, you saw something in me worth saving, even when you were beating my ass. So, thank you, I guess, for not killing me, for stopping. Tyson doesn't know what to say, so he tells the truth. I saw my mother in your eye. She wouldn't let me finish. Green laughs. Bitter, but real. Maybe our mothers are smarter than us. They don't become friends. They don't have some Hollywood reconciliation, but they reach an understanding. And when Green completes rehab, he sends Tyson a card. It says, you broke my face, but you saved my life. I needed to hit rock bottom. You just accelerated the process. No hard feelings. Mitch. Tyson keeps that card, frames it, puts it in his office next to photos of because it's proof of something he's always struggled to believe, that violence isn't his only language, that destruction isn't his only option, that somewhere inside the monster the world created, there's still a kid from Brownsville who knows when to stop. Years pass. Tyson's life continues its chaotic trajectory. More fights, more scandals, more self-destruction. But whenever he feels himself losing control, whenever that rage starts to take over, and the voice in his head says, don't stop, keep going, destroy them, he thinks about Dorothy Green, about an elderly woman in church clothes, holding his broken hand, and calling him wise instead of monster, about her son's eye staring up at him from the concrete, reflecting his dead mother's face, about the choice he made, to stop, when everything in him wanted to continue. In 1995, Tyson goes to prison for rape. During his incarceration, he receives a letter. It's from Dorothy Green. She's dying. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. Weeks left. The letter says, Dear Mike, I don't know if you remember me. I'm Mitch Green's mother. We met 7 years ago in that boxing gym, after you fought my son in the street. I came to thank you for not killing him. I'm writing because I'm dying, and there are things I need to say before I go. Mitch is alive, sober, 5 years, has a job at a community center, teaching kids to box, has a daughter, named her Dorothy, after me. He's not perfect, still angry sometimes, still makes mistakes, but he's alive, and he's trying, and that's because of you, whether you know it or not. That beating you gave him was his bottom. It humbled him, showed him he wasn't invincible, showed him that his mouth and his pride were going to get him killed if he didn't change. You gave him a mirror, a bloody, brutal mirror, but sometimes that's what we need to see ourselves clearly. But I'm not writing to talk about Mitch. I'm writing to talk about you, because I've been watching your life unfold from a distance. I've seen the trials, the prison sentence, the way the world has turned on you, and I want you to know something. You're still not a monster. I know you feel like one. I know the world treats you like one, but I was there that day in the gym. I saw your face, when I told you what you really are. I saw a boy who needed to hear that he's capable of mercy, that he's capable of stopping, that he's capable of choosing life over death. Don't forget that, Mike. Even in this prison cell, even with everything you've lost, you're still that boy who stopped. You're still the man who saw his mother's eyes in a stranger's face, and chose not to become a murderer. Hold on to that, because the world's going to try to take it from you. They're going to tell you you're nothing but violence, nothing but rage, nothing but danger. But I know different. I saw different. And I'm writing this letter, so that years from now, when you're drowning in the lies people tell about you, you'll have proof, from a mother, who had every reason to hate you and chose love instead. You saved my son's life, by nearly ending it, and you saved your own soul by choosing to stop. Don't ever forget, that power isn't just about what you can do, it's about what you choose not to do. God bless you, baby. Your mama's still watching, still proud. Dorothy Green. Tyson reads that letter 17 times in his cell, memorizes every word, and when he's released from prison 3 years later, the first thing he does is try to find Dorothy Green. He wants to thank her, wants to tell her that her letter kept him alive, that on his darkest days in prison, when he thought about ending it all, he'd read her words, and remember that at least one person in the world saw him as human. But Dorothy Green is gone, died in 1996, buried in a small cemetery in Harlem. Tyson finds her grave, brings flowers, stands there for an hour, crying,
talking to a headstone like it can hear him. You saved me, he says. I destroyed your son, and you saved me. I don't know how to repay that. I don't know how to honor that. But I'm trying. I swear I'm trying to be the man you saw in that gym. The man who stopped. The man who chooses mercy. There's a family, visiting a nearby grave. They're staring at Mike Tyson. The Mike Tyson standing over Dorothy Green's headstone, weeping. When Tyson notices them, he walks over. Did you know her? He asks. They nod. She was our aunt. Tyson tells them the story about the street fight, about Dorothy coming to the gym, about her letter in prison, about how she saw him as human when nobody else did. The family is silent. Then one of them, Dorothy's niece, says, Aunt Dorothy talked about you all the time, said you were proof that redemption is real, that people can choose to be better than their worst moment. She was so proud that she got to tell you that, said it was the most important thing she ever did. And Tyson realizes something profound. Dorothy Green didn't just save him, he saved her too, gave her proof that mercy isn't wasted, that seeing the humanity in monsters isn't naive, that love is stronger than violence. Fast forward to 2030. Mike Tyson is doing his one-man show on Broadway, Undisputed Truth. There's a part of the show where he talks about the people who changed his life. He mentions Cus, D'Amato, Muhammad Ali, his children, and Dorothy Green. He tells the whole story. The street fight, the broken hand, the elderly woman in church clothes, the letter in prison. And when he finishes, he says, Dorothy Green taught me something nobody else could. She taught me that mercy is visible, that when you choose not to destroy someone, even when you have every reason and ability to do so, people notice, God notices, and most importantly, you notice, you learn, that you're capable of more than violence, that you're capable of choice, and choice is what makes us human. The audience is silent, then someone starts clapping, then everyone's clapping, standing ovation, not for the knockouts, not for the championships, for the story of a 20-year-old kid who stopped his fist in midair because he saw his mother's eyes in his enemy's face, and for the 67-year-old woman who recognized that moment as sacred. Mitch Green is in the audience that night. Tyson doesn't know it, but after the show, Green comes backstage. They haven't seen each other in 18 years. They stand face to face. Green's face still carries the scars from that night. His nose never fully healed. His orbital bone has a permanent dent, but he's smiling. You told our story, he says. It's not our story, Tyson replies. It's your mother's story. She'd be happy you remembered. Green extends his hand. Tyson takes it. They shake, and Green says, I was mad at you for 20 years. Mad that you embarrassed me. Mad that you ended my career. Mad that everyone saw me at my weakest. But my mother was right. You gave me a second chance. You could have killed me. You should have killed me. I deserved it for talking about Cus like that. But you stopped. And I've spent 20 years trying to figure out why. Now I know. You saw your mother, and she wouldn't let you finish. Tyson's eyes are wet. I'm sorry I broke your face. Green shakes his head. I'm sorry I made you. You were grieving. Cus. I knew that. I used it against you. That was cruel. We were both hurting that night, both swinging at ghosts. The difference is, you had the power to end it, and you chose not to. That's why my mother loved you. That's why I forgive you. They hug, awkward, brief, but real. And when they separate, Green says, my daughter's named Dorothy, after my mom. She's 16, boxes, at the community center I work at. She's good, really good, and I teach her what my mother taught me. Power without mercy is just violence, but power with mercy, that's wisdom. You taught me that, on a Harlem street, at 4 a.m. Took me 20 years to understand it, but I got there. Mike Tyson is 58 years old now. He talks about Dorothy Green in almost every interview, calls her one of the most important people in his life, even though he only met her once, because she gave him something priceless, permission to see himself differently, permission to believe that one moment of mercy could outweigh years of violence, permission to be human. There's a foundation Tyson started, called the Second Chance Initiative. It funds programs for at-risk youth, addiction recovery, and victim offender reconciliation. It's named after Dorothy Green's letter. The tagline, everybody deserves the chance to stop. And whenever someone asks Tyson about the worst thing he ever did, he doesn't talk about the rape conviction, or the ear bite, or the prison time. He talks about nearly killing Mitch Green. And then he talks about Mitch Green's mother walking into a gym and teaching him that the worst thing you almost did doesn't have to define you. The fact that you stopped does. CTA, the footage of that Harlem street fight, still exists. You can find it on YouTube if you search hard enough. Grainy, dark, filmed from a distance. You can see Tyson destroying Mitch Green. You can see Green hitting the pavement. You can see Tyson's fist raised for another strike. And if you watch closely, if you really pay attention, you can see the exact frame where he stops, where his fist freezes, where he makes the choice that Dorothy Green witnessed and recognized as proof of his humanity. Most people watch that video and see violence. They see Mike Tyson being Mike Tyson. They see confirmation of everything they believe about him, that he's dangerous, uncontrollable, a monster who should have been locked up years earlier. But Dorothy Green watched that same footage and saw something different. She saw a young man who could have committed murder and chose not to. She saw a son who listened to his mother's voice, even though she'd been dead for years. She saw mercy in the middle of brutality, and instead of condemning him, she thanked him. That's the perspective shift this story demands from us. How many times do we watch people's worst moments and decide that's all they are? How many times do we see someone's violence and miss their restraint? How many times do we judge someone's capacity for destruction and ignore their choice not to destroy? Dorothy Green understood something most of us forget. The most important fight isn't the one you win, it's the one you choose not to finish. The most powerful punch isn't the one that lands, it's the one you pull back. The truest measure of strength isn't what you can do to someone, it's what you choose not to do. Right now, someone in your life is fighting that battle. They're standing over their version of Mitch Green, with their fist in the air. Maybe it's literal violence. Maybe it's a career-ending email they want to send. Maybe it's a relationship they want to burn down. Maybe it's words they want to scream that can never be taken back. They have the power. They have the justification. They have every reason to finish it. And they're waiting to see if anyone notices when they choose to stop. Will you be their Dorothy Green? Will you witness their moment of mercy and recognize it as proof of their humanity? Will you see past their reputation, past their mistakes, past their capacity for destruction, and acknowledge the wisdom it took to choose restraint? Because here's what Dorothy Green knew, and what saved Mike Tyson's soul. When someone chooses mercy over violence, that choice costs them something. It goes against their nature, their anger, their pain. It requires them to be bigger than their worst instinct. And if nobody witnesses that sacrifice, if nobody validates that choice, they stop making it. Dorothy Green didn't just save Mike Tyson that day in the gym, she saved every future version of him. Every time he felt rage taking over, he remembered an elderly woman in church clothes holding his broken hand and calling him wise. Every time he wanted to destroy someone, he heard her voice. Monsters don't stop, but you did. That's the power of witnessing someone's mercy. That's the impact of recognizing their restraint. That's what it means to see someone's humanity when the whole world has decided they're a monster. So the question isn't just, who's your Dorothy Green? The real question is, whose Dorothy Green are you failing to be right now? Who stopped themselves from destroying something or someone, and you didn't notice? Who made the hard choice to show mercy, and you focused on the violence instead? Because Mike Tyson nearly killed a man at 4 a.m. on a Harlem street. But a 67-year-old mother saw past the brutality to the moment he chose to stop. And that changed everything. Not just for Tyson, for Mitch Green, for everyone who's ever needed someone to witness their mercy and call it wisdom. Pay attention to the moments people stop. Those are the moments that define who they really are.